In the Persian Gulf, under a bright, cloudless afternoon sky, three American-flagged oil tankers moved steadily through international waters toward the Strait of Hormuz. Each vessel carried roughly 2 million barrels of crude oil, forming a combined cargo worth hundreds of millions of dollars destined for refineries in South Korea. The voyage itself was routine, following established maritime routes protected by international law and monitored by regional naval forces. Commercial shipping in this region is essential to the global economy, with millions of barrels of oil passing through daily to supply energy-dependent nations. Although the tankers were civilian vessels without weapons, they were not entirely unprotected. Intelligence reports had already warned of increased tensions and possible harassment of shipping traffic. Meanwhile, naval forces nearby quietly monitored the transit, ensuring that any disruption would be met with a rapid response. As the tankers advanced across open waters, radar signals from coastal installations began tracking their movement. Soon afterward, 6 Iranian F-4 Phantom fighter jets launched from a nearby airbase and accelerated toward the convoy. Their approach was fast and deliberate, signaling an interception rather than a routine patrol. The jets descended rapidly and began aggressive maneuvers over the ships, flying dangerously low and creating sonic booms that shook the vessels and alarmed their crews. Iranian pilots radioed warnings, accusing the ships of transporting stolen resources and demanding they change course toward an Iranian port. The tanker captains refused, asserting their legal right to transit international waters. The confrontation marked a sudden escalation, transforming a standard commercial journey into a tense military standoff with significant geopolitical consequences. As the Iranian aircraft intensified their intimidation tactics, the situation escalated from harassment to direct threat. The fighter jets performed close passes over the tankers, forcing them to slow down and maneuver defensively. Crew members aboard the ships issued distress calls, reporting aggressive military interference and requesting immediate protection. Nearby, American Naval Command authorities assessed the situation and determined that hostile intent had been demonstrated. Combat aircraft already airborne were authorized to intervene if necessary. Within minutes, U.S. Navy fighter jets accelerated toward the scene at supersonic speed. Communication channels filled with warnings demanding that the Iranian aircraft disengage and return to base. When those warnings were ignored, defensive engagement was authorized. Advanced air-to-air missiles were launched, targeting the intercepting fighters. The confrontation lasted only moments. The Iranian aircraft were unable to evade the incoming missiles and were rapidly neutralized. The tanker convoy remained unharmed, and protective air patrols established a defensive perimeter above the ships. The incident represented more than a localized encounter. It was treated as a direct threat to commercial navigation and maritime security. Military command interpreted the attempted coercion of civilian vessels as an unacceptable violation of international norms. Consequently, authorization was granted for a broader response aimed at preventing future interference with shipping routes. This decision reflected long-standing strategic priorities focused on maintaining open sea lanes and ensuring the uninterrupted flow of global energy supplies. The immediate engagement thus became the trigger for a wider operation designed not only to defend the convoy, but also to neutralize the infrastructure that enabled such threats. Following the aerial confrontation, a coordinated strike operation was launched to degrade the capabilities of the Iranian Air Force in the region. Electronic warfare aircraft first disrupted radar and air defense systems, blinding coastal monitoring networks and preventing effective response. Precision-guided munitions were then deployed against multiple air bases identified as launch points for the intercepting fighters. Runways were cratered, hangars damaged, and aircraft on the ground destroyed. Support facilities such as maintenance depots, fuel storage areas, and communication centers were also targeted to reduce operational readiness. Additional cruise missile-struck logistics infrastructure deeper inland, including training centers and supply hubs that sustained air operations. Naval vessel position offshore contributed to the offensive by launching long-range missiles against specialized aviation facilities. Allied aircraft from partner nations participated as well, targeting command and control centers responsible for coordinating air defense operations. The strikes were conducted rapidly and simultaneously, overwhelming defensive systems and limiting the possibility of organized resistance. Within a short period, multiple bases were rendered inoperable, and regional air capabilities were significantly reduced. Military officials characterized the operation as a defensive measure designed to preserve freedom of navigation and deter future interference with commercial shipping. Throughout the engagement, the protected tankers continued their course without sustaining damage. The swift escalation from interception to coordinated strike demonstrated a strategic doctrine emphasizing rapid, overwhelming response to threats against civilian maritime traffic. The broader objective was not territorial gain, but the preservation of secure trade routes vital to international energy markets. In the aftermath, conflicting narratives emerged regarding the events. Iranian state media portrayed the incident as a defensive action within national jurisdiction, minimizing reported losses and asserting continued operational readiness. However, satellite imagery and reconnaissance data indicated extensive damage to air bases, infrastructure, and aircraft. Official statements from the United States Department of Defense described the engagement as a lawful act of self-defense carried out to protect civilian vessels operating in international waters. According to these statements, the broader strikes targeted facilities directly associated with threats to maritime security. The international shipping community responded with relief, emphasizing the importance of safeguarding global trade routes. Insurance risk assessments for regional shipping stabilized after initial volatility, reflecting confidence that major transit lanes would remain open. Governments heavily dependent on Gulf energy supplies expressed quiet support for measures ensuring uninterrupted transport. The 3 tankers completed their journey and delivered their cargo as scheduled, reinforcing the message that commercial navigation would continue despite tensions. Analysts observed that the event significantly altered strategic calculations in the region by demonstrating the risks associated with direct interference in international shipping. Military planners emphasized deterrence rather than escalation, framing the operation as a warning against future attempts to coerce civilian vessels. The incident thus became a pivotal moment highlighting the intersection of energy security, international law, and military power in one of the world's most strategically important waterways. The long-term consequences of the confrontation extended beyond the immediate tactical outcome. By responding decisively, the U.S. Navy reinforced a strategic commitment to protecting global trade routes and maintaining open navigation corridors. The event reshaped perceptions of risk associated with interfering in maritime commerce and demonstrated the speed at which local incidents can escalate into broader military operations. For global energy markets, the uninterrupted delivery of oil signaled continuity and stability despite regional tensions. For regional military forces, the outcome underscored the vulnerability of conventional air assets when confronting advanced defensive systems. Analysts describe the engagement as a defining example of deterrence through rapid escalation and overwhelming response. The balance of power within the Gulf environment shifted as operational capabilities in the southern sector were significantly reduced. Commercial shipping companies adjusted risk models accordingly, while allied nations expanded security cooperation to ensure continued protection of energy routes. Ultimately, the incident illustrated how strategic waterways function not only as economic lifelines, but also as arenas of geopolitical competition. A routine commercial voyage transformed into a high-stakes military confrontation, Yet the ships completed their transit and delivered their cargo without interruption. The episode reinforced a central message. Safeguarding international maritime commerce remains a priority for major powers. An attempt to disrupt it can provoke swift and far-reaching consequences.